Good evening and welcome to Ion Bethel. I'm Paul and Prody, your hosts this evening. We have with us today First Selectman candidate, the caucus endorsed candidate for the Republican ticket, Larry Kravis. Larry, thank you for being on Ion Bethel.
Good to be here, Paul.
It's nice to see you. Now, Larry, today is September 3rd, so we have 2 months to the actual election day. And you've been spending the last few weeks or so trying to introduce yourself to the people, and you're here again to have a conversation with the people of Bethel. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, give us a bio, how long you've lived in town, that sort of thing.
Sure. I've been knocking on doors, and there are a lot of doors to knock on, and this is a great opportunity for me to get people to know who I am and what I've done and how long I've been in Bethel. I've lived here for 30 years. Moved here from Michigan. We moved 12 times in 15 years, so wow. There were boxes that we never unloaded. But my hometown is Syracuse, New York. I went to Syracuse University. Right. Played some basketball there, but I was on a baseball scholarship. And graduated in 1963, which makes me, I guess, if I do my math right, a senior citizen. Right. My wife and I have been married for 46 years. We married on June 29th, and on July 1st, we were in a car heading for Orlando, Florida. And from then on, the traveling never stopped. I worked for, when I got out of school, Montgomery Ward. My choice was coming out of Syracuse to either go to Albany, New York, or Orlando, Florida. So guess which one I chose. We moved down there, worked for Montgomery Ward for about 5 years, and decided that my kids were little babies, and there were times that I didn't see them from early morning to late at night. Right. There was a couple times when I waked them up just to make sure they knew that I was still around. And I took a job in 1968 with Maxwell House Coffee General Foods in Massachusetts. And that's where my career in the food business continued. Right. I moved from Florida to Massachusetts, took another job as an account manager or territory manager down in Alabama. From there to a similar kind of job in Detroit, Michigan, a little bit bigger area. And I moved to from Detroit to Connecticut, lived in Newtown, and did some work in the home office, went back to Michigan as a district manager responsible for Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. And then came back a couple of years later to Connecticut in 1979, where I was a region manager and a franchise manager. That's probably the biggest assignment I had with General Foods. As a franchise manager, we split the country in half. More Maxwell House is consumed on the eastern part of the country than on the west. West is Folger, and back then Hills Brothers Coffee. And that business at that particular time was $1.3 billion worth of volume, and about 450 people. In 1985, Philip Morris bought General Foods, and that was their first foray into the food business. And 3 years later, they bought Kraft. And about a year later, they started smashing things together and decided to do things differently. In 1986, I moved on from my responsibilities at Maxwell House to, at that particular time, convenience stores and the worldwide military business. We had then 13 people and one computer that was unplugged. And those people were responsible for the military commissary business around the world. And from that point on, it grew to, we ended up, when I left, being the largest supplier of food to the military, to the defense system, to the Defense Department commissary system. And we moved from 13 people to about 250 with 2 broker sales organizations. So I feel good about that because I was in all of that from the beginning.
Right.
And it was interesting. I spent my time in front of the House Armed Services Committee on Morale and Welfare and Recreation. I was one of these guys, you know, that would whisper to the person in front. At that time, we were talking about trying to get the government to pay us a little faster. That didn't work out too well. We continued on a 30-day terms to pay us in 45 days, but that was accepted. I retired in 1996. My wife had a business going in town out of our house and found the George Shaker building on Greenwood Avenue that was available. And she opened up the Gift Cottage in 1991 and has been running it for 20 years. They'll have their anniversary next year. I think she was in cahoots with Pat Smithwick from the Chamber of Commerce to make sure that I didn't play too much golf or dilly-dally around the house. So, Pat got me involved at that particular time in the health department.
Right.
And I've been working with Laura Vasile on emergency preparedness for, I guess it's going on 5 years now.
Okay.
My particular responsibility is to be a business educator. And that role is intended to have, because we were focusing on pandemic flu, to get businesses thinking about continuity planning.
Right.
We, at that particular time, were looking at bird flu. And some of the experiences that they were getting on mortality rates with that influenza in Southeast Asia were staggering. It was like the worst pandemic that ever hit this country was in 1918. And the mortality rate there was 2.5%. The experience to date in Southeast Asia is a 60% mortality rate. And you can imagine the impact that that would have on a community like Bethel, where 40 to 50% of your employees are out sick. Schools could be closed for 2 to 3 months. How do you keep your kids going on their education? You wouldn't be getting product in, you couldn't get product out, grocery stores could be closed. So it was necessary to start focusing on that. And what I put together is a PowerPoint presentation that we felt would be the best way to get this continuity planning idea out to all of the businesses in town. We also had, in 1996, a drill over at the middle school in anticipation of the eventuality of having to either inoculate or dispense pharmaceuticals to everybody in Bethel and Reading from one central location. We ran that drill. There's an interesting story there because it's tough to get people interested in this and to volunteer in this. And if it wasn't for the great ROTC kids at the high school, we probably would not have had a very effective test of our plan. They were there all day long, 30 of them, and they were terrific. They were wheeling people around. So lo and behold, now we have swine flu at our doorstep. Right. So we are gearing up to be able to deal with that. I also am on the board of directors of the Visiting Nurses Association. I come from a medical family. I've got a son that's a dentist and a brother that's a dentist, and my dad was a dentist, and I have a brother that's a surgeon. So I did have a dream when I was playing ball that one day I would buy a building after pitching for the Yankees for a few years and move my family members into it, and I would be the landlord, caretaker, and raise the rent once a month and play golf every day. But that never happened.
Larry, I'd like to talk a little bit about your work experience and how you feel that would help you, or how that would extrapolate into working in the town government. Sure. A lot of people are asking, who's Larry Krabus, and you have a depth of executive experience. Why don't you fill us in a little bit about that and how it ties in with your community service and community volunteerism.
One of the questions that I have heard asked about me is, you know, he's inexperienced and unprepared. You know, I never went into a single job, either with Montgomery Ward or especially with Kraft General Foods, that I totally was prepared for. My son, that's a dentist, didn't come out of dental school totally prepared for what he experienced, and it's on-the-job training and getting in the fire of battle when you're dealing with, in the coffee business in particular, some very demanding retailers in a very competitive business that you have to learn along the way. If you don't, you're not very successful, and you're probably looking for something else to do very quickly. I don't ever remember having all the resources that I needed, all the dollars that I needed, and all the people I needed. Year after year, the expectation was we would continue to build a business with less resources. And there was always a different buzzword every year, whether it's headcount reduction or workforce reduction. I can't remember all those different ones. And it ended up being, you know, you were going to have fewer people, but you needed to continue to build a business. So I know what it's like not to have all the resources that you need. And I also know that one individual cannot bring the success that you need and the results that you need by themselves. You have to work through people. I had 450 people as a franchise manager within that franchise, but I relied on my region managers and my district managers and the people that worked for them to get the job done. And back then it was a bottom-up kind of organization. We really did rely on people contributing and participating and giving us the insights that we needed in order to be competitive and to do more with less. And it's the same kind of, I think, work environment within the town government, within the political arena. I mean, you really rely on a lot of talented people that we have here. You give them a job to do and you empower them to do it, and you got to be involved with them in order to guide them along to make sure that they're tracking on plan. First of all, you have to have a plan. You need to know where you're going, and I feel very proud of the involvement that we have had in my 2 years on the Board of Ed with the administration and developing a vision for the school system and a roadmap for where education can really be in this town.
I think that's an important point to make, though. You know, the education budget's about 65% of the entire town budget. You're the vice chairman. Why don't you give us a little bit of an idea of what you did while you were on the board as a vice chairman? I know that there was a lot of committees and a lot of work.
A lot of work. Matter of fact, I've worked harder now than when I was working. There are, I believe, 5 different subcommittees that I'm involved with. Right now I'm involved as chairman of the Contract Negotiation Committee, and we are currently beginning the process with the Teachers Union. I was involved last year with the paraprofessional group. That was a long process, but I believe a win-win situation both for the town and the paraprofessionals. They are a very important group involved with a lot of kids with special needs, and we needed to be aware of what they were looking for, and we also needed to deal with the economic environment that we're in. I'm on the Facilities Committee, and Mike Duff and I have spent a lot of time taking a look at the town properties, the 5 different schools that are in the educational park, and putting together a plan on how to deal with the infrastructure issues that exist there. We have 2 schools that are 30 years old, and they need some work. And we need to be able to do that without getting involved in crisis management.
Right.
We started the whole budget process last year, I thought, in a very effective, thoughtful way. We knew, based on what we were all reading and feeling, that things were going to be tough, and that if we waited until the typical time period, which was in November, December, that we were going to probably not do this as effectively and as thoroughly as we needed to. And we started the process really in the month of August. Not soon, that shortly after we just closed that one fiscal year, that one budget year. And sure enough, as we got into the fall, everybody knows what happened to the economy in the state and the federal economy. So I feel good that we were ahead of the curve, and I also feel good that working together with the administration, we very quickly put in a freeze on all discretionary spending. We tried as best we could to sit down with the different unions to talk about some things that maybe they could do to help in this financial pinch that we were in. We weren't successful in doing that, but we did get freezes from the non-union people that helped. And we were fortunate enough, based on starting this whole process as early as we did, to be able to free up $142,000 that we turned back to the town.
Okay.
I know our first selectman has taken credit for that, but that was from the hard work and due diligence and fiscal responsibility and involvement of the Board of Education. And we not only did that, but on this new high school we just renovated, there was an absence of an effective proper security system that was taken out, I guess, when that whole renovation project started. Right. And I think it started high, and they cut it back down, and that's when they started taking things out in order to get down to the, I guess, $27 million project that ended up being $34 million. We went off and found a grant from the Homeland Security Department in the state of Connecticut that allowed us to go put in a security system. That grant gave us about $72,000 worth of coverage, and we went back in because we were told that the town could not fund the sharing portion of that. We went back to the school administration and found the money ourselves by some further cuts and restrictions that we put in. Right. Because it was so important to have that in there. During the, as you know, during the construction of that building, there was a $300,000 damage done, vandalism damage done. I think we have yet to uncover who the culprit was on that, but it was $300,000 worth of damage, and this security system now is going to allow us to make sure things like that don't happen again. Right. But more importantly, in this day and age, it provides the protection for our students and our teachers and for that building that we just spent $34 million on, so that we don't have to go back to the taxpayers and say we have a problem here and we need a sizable sum of money. Right.
Now, that brings up a question now. We were talking about saving money for the town, and one of your platform planks is being taxpayer focused. Could you elaborate on that?
I do, because it's accepting the fact, I hope, that everybody understands that in town government we all work for the taxpayer. Right. And that may be trite to say, but that's the truth. And we need to be focused, especially in the environment that we are in, on the taxpayer's ability to continue to fund the resource needs of this town. And part of that is making sure that all of our commissions and our boards and town employees understand who they work for and are responsive to the taxpayer. People's questions need to be answered. People's problems need to be solved in a timely manner, and it's an attitude about, I know who I work for, and those are the people that we're going to take care of and to satisfy. But it also means that these annual fights that I've been exposed to, especially over the last 2 years at budget time, is not the way to be conducting business in this town. It's not the way to provide town services, and it's not the way to be providing the education that our kids deserve in this competitive world that they're going into. We need to aggressively go after and build our tax revenue base. I have tried to find someone moving aggressively against that, and I've yet to find that. I know we have a Route 6 study, and that study needs a champion. We need to do it so that the people that live in that area are comfortable with the plan and have the opportunity to input to it, but we really do need to develop that that corridor. Right. And we're not going to be able to do it until we get the state involved, because the biggest problem there is that runoff from I-84. That is such a mess, especially on the weekends, as people try to get away from vacation, or at 5 o'clock at night when they're trying to get home from work, and everybody's looking for a shortcut, and 6 ends up being a shortcut to Newtown. And until we solve that problem, we can have the best plan, but we need to be able to get people home, and we need to be able to get people to whatever we're developing there. I took some time a week ago Saturday and took my camera and went down Germantown Road and took a look at what I thought were similar box stores, but they were medical box stores on Germantown Road, and there are 4 buildings that are anywhere from 50 to 75,000 square feet inside. And I know groups are concerned about Costco or a box store coming there and having acres and acres of parking lot and noise and and traffic, but Germantown Road can handle those medical box stores very nicely. And we have nothing like that on this part of town.
That's true.
If you live in Brookfield or Newtown or this side of Bethel, you have to travel all the way to Germantown Road in order to get either to those medical complexes or to that new center at the hospital. So and we need to aggressively also go after Clark Park. I think that's a big opportunity. There are too many buildings that are vacant now, and too many lots there that can be developed, and we need to professionally market that. We have enough talented people in town and a number of great thinkers that have brought together, regardless of where they're coming from, whether it's from the Republican Party or Democratic Party or business owners, to bring those people together to help us put together a plan that can get at this. My concern is that these are not turnkey kinds of operations. By the time you get approval and groundbreaking and construction and grand opening, you're not talking about 3 to 6 months. You may be talking about 3 to 6 years. So, you know, we need to get about doing that, because everybody around us is doing that. Brookfield just opened up that cornfield to a 128,000 square foot shopping center that they're putting in. New Milford just changed some zoning ordinances in order to attract business. And, you know, there are just not a lot of businesses knocking at your door saying, we're looking for a site. Can you take us through and show us what's available in Bethel?
And a number of the other surrounding towns have an active economic development commission that they're charged with going out and finding people to occupy space. So we're you know, for a lot of people don't understand that town is really in competition with the surrounding area.
Oh, absolutely. And we may need some professional marketing help too, in order to market Bethel to those businesses or industries that are looking to expand.
Right.
And you know, that probably needs to be done.
Now, Larry, we only have a few minutes left, so just to wrap it up, obviously you have 2 months to campaign, and what are your plans going forward? What do you feel that you want to get across to the people as the reason why they should vote for Larry Kravis over Matt Knickerbocker?
We're at a point in time in Bethel, in my opinion, that we could use some good professional expertise, business management experience, people management experience, to deal with the critical issues that are confronting us now, but as this market turns around, to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to present themselves.
Right.
My only concern is the first selectman tour is 2 years. Some other appointed commissions and boards are 4 years, and people could probably wait you out,
Right.
and not move as aggressively ahead as we probably should in this environment. But I think we need to start from day one. I have a philosophy too that says that if you're on a commission or a board, you know, you really need to be at those meetings, and you need to be actively involved. Otherwise, you need to question why you're doing this, because it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time to do it effectively. And I believe everybody needs to be working on behalf of the taxpayer in order to make Bethel the place that we know it is. It's a great community with a lot of great features. It's a safe town, and I moved here for that reason, and also because this is a great place for my kids to get the education that I wanted them to have after living in Birmingham, Alabama when they had that problem, or Detroit, Michigan right after they had their riots there. This is a pretty darn neat place to live, and we need to keep it that way.
And with that, Larry, I appreciate that you came on to the show tonight, and we look forward to working with you in the next coming months to assure that you win as first selectman, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And for I Am Bethel, I'm Paul Improta. Thank you for viewing our show. Thank you.